G'day guys, MBS. Today we're going to be looking at what could be described as a very simple job, and that's adjusting a steering box. Alright, now you've probably never done one before. I don't get a chance to do many either. Even during my apprenticeship I'd be lucky if I adjusted one or two. But as years go by, steering boxes start to wear, they get a bit more play. They become a little bit more erratic to drive because you're forever taking up that slack in the steering box all the time. And I noticed that particularly in my Coaster bus. Now it's a power steering unit, and I can definitely notice I've got about, I reckon, 60mm travel in the steering wheel trying to keep this thing on the road. It did get adjusted about 4 months back when I had a wheel alignment. They took it up a little bit tighter, but still it's way too loose. There is a spec on my vehicle of 40mm, maximum 40mm travel, so anything between 0 and 40, and I never make them 0 anyway, that's a little bit too tight. But we're going to show you how to adjust a steering box. If you've never done one before, it's very simple. But before we go downstairs and have a look at the Coaster, and we'll have a look inside the steering box. I've got it up on screen here. This is the manual box, whereas the Coaster is hydraulic power steering. Basically, much the muchness, they still have a worm drive and they still have a sector shaft, regardless of whether they're power steering or not. So the adjustments are identical, you know. Alright, so let's have a look at this, a close-up, and I'll show you the parts that we're looking at and what we're adjusting. And then we'll go downstairs and we'll have a look at the bus. Now there's only a few parts in here that we need to particularly worry about. That's the input shaft here, worm drive. You can see the thread going around it and the ball bearings. And the knuckle that's in the middle here with the teeth. Well, that's it over here, there's that knuckle. There are the 3 teeth, as represented in that picture. Then we have the sector shaft, which is the long shaft that goes right through the box, and then on the bottom of this a very large nut with the pitman arm, which connects to your steering gear. Now we call this a quadrant, this little section here, basically because it looks like a bit of a quadrant. Alright, now that moves the steering as the worm drive spins and spins and spins. It moves along and it turns the sector shaft. Okay, so this is the bit we're adjusting. There's an adjuster nut right here on top. There'll be a cover plate on top of the steering box, an adjuster nut, and it pushes down onto that sector shaft and forces it down into the steering box so that these 2 gears mesh. Now these gears are not parallel, they're angled to each other. So if I was to turn that shaft, this shaft here would want to pop out because of the angle the teeth are ground at. And that's why the adjuster nut sits right here on top. It keeps the sector shaft down, stops it from popping out. Okay. Alright, so this is what we're adjusting. We're going to be pushing the sector shaft. Well, we're not really. The sector shaft sits naturally deep into the gears here. And we're going to adjust the play. So when we turn the steering wheel, this worm drive, it's going to want to pop that shaft up every time we wriggle it, and that's where we get that free travel from. So if we adjust it super tight, then this won't come up at all and you'll get no free play in between these gears. So we just want a little bit. Okay, now steering boxes wear, of course, they don't all wear evenly through all the teeth here. It might wear a little bit more here than it does there, depending how many left-hand turns you do to right-hand turns. So what we have to do is find the tightest spot. So we're going to turn the steering wheel, the input shaft, bit by bit until we find the tightest section. And that's where we're going to adjust the steering box. Not in the straight line, but on the tightest section of the sector shaft. Alright? Because if we did it in a straight line and we gave it, say, almost 0 lash, and the tight spot's over here, you're going to bind your steering up, and the steering is going to get heavy in that one section where it binds up. So we're going to find the least movement and then make that movement even less. Get it pretty close to maybe a couple of mil movement on my steering wheel. Alrighty, at the coaster bus, let's first determine where our tightest spot is on the steering. Now what I've got it on now is I've got it on full lock on the left, and we can see the play here, and we're going to measure that. So we're going to just put a tape measure on, pull that across here, and then move it up the tape measure. So I have got about 70mm play in that one spot. Alright, now I'm going to move it not quite straight, and then straight, and then the same position on the other side, and full lock. I'm going to go through all those positions and check how much play I've got, and that'll determine where my tightest spot is, and then I'll turn the steering wheel back to that tight spot and we'll measure it from there, and that's where we're going to adjust it from. I'm not going to go through all that because I've got to keep starting and stopping the bus all the time to do this, because it's just so hard to turn this. I could do it, but I'll just start it up and turn it off all the time, and much easier. So we'll come back to it once I've done all that. Okay, we've gone through all that process, and it appears in this case that straight ahead I've got the least movement. Okay, so that's pretty good. So we'll do this test again, bring that down to here and go through the movement, and we have got 40mm. Okay, that is just within specs. Now I can't remember if I actually mentioned that this has had a wheel alignment and the guys adjusted the steering box, and that's probably what they adjusted it down to, 40mm. Alright, I still feel that I could go a little tighter than that without going too tight, because there's still, being a bus and having truck tyres, I'm still doing this all the time just to keep it on the road. It's much better since they adjusted the box. Like, this play must have been way more than that, so this is much better than what it used to be, but I want it to get it as close as possible as I can without making the steering box tight. Alright, and we'll tell you about how to go and check that at the very end. So I'm going to go down underneath the box now and adjust it, and we'll show you that if I can, if I get the camera down there under close enough, and you'll see what I'm doing. Okay, hopefully my hands won't get in the way here, but you can see I've got a 6mm Allen key into the adjuster nut, a 19mm spanner to undo the lock nut. Now all I'm going to do is just keep tightening up that bolt on the that's pushing on the sector shaft. At the moment that's travelling really easy. I'm getting no resistance on that. Gee, that's a fair bit of adjustment. Now I'm getting resistance. So that bolt now is pressing against the thrust washer that's pushing against the sector shaft. So I should have virtually zero clearance here. If I was to get up, I'm not going to, but if I was to get up and turn the steering wheel, I bet you there'd be still play in there. And that play could be in the knuckle or the coupler from the steering wheel down to the input shaft of the steering box. So we can't do anything about that. If there's still wear there, then if it's bad, we should be replacing either the coupler or the uni joint. But all we're doing down here is making sure the steering box is good. Now while I'm turning the center bolt, I've got my hand on that spanner so it's not turning with the bolt, because you may get a bind up if you allow that nut to spin with it. So we're keeping that off its seat so that we can turn this adjuster screw. Now that's getting tight there, and I'm not going to go any tighter than that. As you can see, I'm not pushing on the very end of the Allen key, I'm just pushing down close here, because you don't want to over tighten it, of course. Now from here I want to go back 1/8 of a turn roughly, and then I will lock up the nut at the base, and now we'll see what the adjustment is like. Okay, I don't know if you can see the drag link over here. That's the big fella that comes off the bottom of the box and then goes off to the steering linkages. Alright, let's go back upstairs and see what the new play is. Right, I'm just going to start this up, rotate it around a few times, get everything loosened up a bit, and then I'll check my adjustment outcome and see if it's okay. Well, that felt good. It didn't seem like it was binding up anywhere. Alright, let's check our adjustment now. That's better. I've brought that down to about 20mm, which is pretty good. Alright, so any play, as I said before, could be in the knuckles or the coupler. That's acceptable. I mean, if this still had 60mm after that adjustment, which I doubt it would because I've adjusted it in quite a bit, then you would suspect your coupler or your uni joint in your steering column has a lot of play there. Now the important thing is that you don't overstress this, because you don't want to bring all your tie rods into the equation, because there's a drag length, there's tie rods, idler arm, any movement in any of those all contribute to this sort of thing on the road. Okay, if you've adjusted your steering box and it's not binding and it's still wandering all over the place, then have a look at the rest of your suspension, all your tie rod ends, your drag length and all that sort of stuff, ball joints. Check all that out and see how much play is and all that. Alright, but this is just a steering box adjustment, so we've done the best we can here. That's pretty damn good. This should drive considerably better. I won't have so much travel all over the place. Now, as I said earlier, the final check would be to see if it's binding, that you haven't actually done it too tight. You can only do that virtually when it's off the ground. When the wheels are off the ground, there's very little resistance to turning the steering wheel. Yeah, even with power steering on this on the ground, it still has tightness, so it's not a good feel. Wheels off the ground, and then you should be able to turn this with one finger, and if you've over tightened the steering box, you'll feel it getting tighter in that one section where you've adjusted it. So that's, you could feel for that, okay? And you'd probably feel that on the road too. You'd probably find you're actually fighting the steering to keep it in the centre. So that's just the final check to make sure that you haven't over tightened it, alright? But it's all about feel. It's getting that bolt up against the thrust washer, which is pushing against the sector shaft. If you get that too tight, it will bind, okay? And you could damage your worm drive or your roller bearings on that cradle that has the 3 teeth that contacts the sector shaft. So you don't want that, alright? So make sure you don't over tighten it, and that's how you double check that you haven't over tightened it, just by freewheeling this by hand while the wheels are off the ground. Alright, so that's how you adjust the steering box on a coaster. I think this will prove to be much better to drive it than I have had in the past. Driving this when it had over 60mm in it was fun. That's why I took it in for a wheel alignment. I thought, and yeah, I had caster bushes were gone, top ball joints were gone, and there was another thing gone as well, that the idler arm. I had to replace the first idler arm over on the driver's side. All those contributed as well, so that's what you have to be careful of. But the only thing you need to worry about when adjusting the steering box is getting it too tight. Alright, so just make sure you do that final check of freewheeling it while the wheels are off the ground, to make sure that you're not binding up in the centre. If you happen to have done yours right in the middle like I have done mine, that's where the least play was. So yeah, just make sure it's not binding around the centre when you're freewheeling it left and right, okay? If you don't feel any resistance difference in drag, you're good to go, and you've reduced your steering wheel play down to its virtually bare minimum. I could have tightened that up not backed it off that 1/8 of a turn, but as I said, I have the high risk of binding, and we don't want that. So back it off 1/8 of a turn, and you're good to go. That's about the best you're going to get your play in your steering box. Any more play, it's somewhere else, and you've got to track that down. Alright guys, catch you in another video.